Hi, if you want to successfully achieve your New Year's resolutions in 2024, then this episode is for you. You're amazing and you deserve to achieve all of your desires in 2024. What you're currently doing right now might not be working and it may not have worked in the past, and you may be feeling frustrated and may have even given up on setting goals for 2024, or you may have this little subconscious niggle that you're not going to achieve them. I know from personal experience, been there, done that. So what we're going to cover off today is some successful tools that'll guarantee you or help to guarantee that you achieve your goals in 2024. Welcome to the Hero's Journey podcast. My name is Joel Sadler, entrepreneur and internet marketer, and I've helped multiple business owners scale over the years and achieve their goals. I'd like to introduce Mike Harris, my co-host. He's an entrepreneur, human behavioral expert and coach, and has been speaking for 17 years and personally helped hundreds of people transform. I'm pleased to say I'm one of them, and I'm really grateful to be on this journey with him. So today we're going to look really much into having deep conversations and understanding yourself further. And if you want more and more of that, and you want to embark on this journey with us, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel because this is just one of multiple conversations that we have. Sometimes unshared frustration around not achieving goals, and I think they're quite a confronting thing. I've found them a confronting thing to write goals out and then not achieve them. And I've sort of toyed with like setting really large extreme goals and then bringing them right back down again. It's quite an interesting journey to do that. And I know what's interesting, there's obviously stats and research around where people write their goals down, they're more likely to achieve them. They've done tests and there's a whole lot of stuff, online where people are talking about that. So I think that's the first step, is just to get the stuff down on paper and get comfortable doing that. But I look back and have found certain goals that I haven't achieved, an element of frustration and embarrassment, coming up at times, and even sort of being confronted with feelings of like fear of failure, or what if I actually really, to achieve that goal, I've got to invest this money, and what actually if I lose that money? So it's all good getting the goals down on paper, but then actually implementing them and actioning them is a different thing, I'm finding, and can be quite confronting and challenging. And I know for me in the past that's been enough to derail me off the track of getting my goal. So I've had to set that intention, I've been on the journey, and then something's come up and I've derailed myself, or allowed myself to be derailed from that fear of engulfment, or fear of losing money, or fear of failure, or what all my friends think, or whatever it might be. Um, so I think some of that sort of stuff comes up for people, not just for me. In your experience, Mike, you've worked with hundreds of people. What do you see what do you see people struggling with around goals, number one? And then secondly, what would be some of the main causes, in your opinion, and why people don't always reach their goals?
Yeah, this is a cool conversation. It's a big conversation. So, if we strip it back initially, every single human being, you, me included, A, we all have blind spots, and B, we have things that are really important to us in our life. So we'll call them priorities or values. If you look at the study of axiology, which is human priority, it's basically from your kind of number one priority down to infinity. So in all the different areas of life, we're all made up with a different set of values based on what we perceive often was missing in our childhood or our adulthood. What we perceive as missing, the void, not there, we try and fill. And so we then have a drive to achieve the very thing that we think is missing in our life. I'll give you a couple of examples. If someone's been in a marriage or a relationship and then all of a sudden they go through a breakup, prior to the breakup, some of the friend group may not have seen those people as much or as often because they're happily inside a dynamic with their family or the relationship. And so they have that support and that connection, that human connection there. And then when you go through the breakup, all of a sudden there's a massive void that appears for the person, because all of a sudden that connection's gone, that partner's gone. And so the void that appears is a lack of connection or a lack of someone to talk to. And so all of a sudden those values will get shuffled, and then friends will like kind of become more important again. And so they want to start connecting with friends. And this type of thing happens to us all through our life. So those values are what make us unique. So every single person has a unique perception on the world and project their perception based on their voids, values, and beliefs, and their beliefs being their stories about themselves, things they've attached to and made mean about themselves. we project that into our reality, and then the outer world is a reflection of our projection.
Hmm.
So, given that, what happens a lot of the time when people set goals, and I've been guilty of this as well. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but as I said before, we all still have our blind spots. We all still do
Mm,
these things, and it's a matter
mm,
of stripping those layers back and seeing them. And it's a continual process. As long as we're alive, having a human experience, we're going to have this situation.
mm,
So, with your values, what often happens is people are setting goals. The most common thing I see is they're setting goals at the start of the year. The whole New Year's resolution thing comes along, and we've kind of been conditioned culturally,
mm,
set your New Year's resolutions. But what's happening is people are not really setting goals that are aligned to what's most important to them at the time. And so often they're injecting or bringing in someone else's, what they've kind of looked up to in someone else and gone, oh, this person's got heaps and heaps of money. And my goal this year is to make lots more money because I want to try and achieve what this person's done.
mm,
But if we look at our results and what our reality is, if you haven't had money, for example, or wealth creation really high on your priorities, and it hasn't been something you've been really into and researching and putting strategies in place, and all of a sudden you say, I'm going to increase my wealth by this much, and it's
mm,
not really
mm,
congruent for you, it's not really yours, it's someone else's you've looked at or you've compared yourself to, then the chances of you doing that are minimal because it's not really what's important to you. It's important to someone else, but you've compared yourself to that person.
mm,
You've
mm,
minimized yourself. And then what you do is you make yourself wrong and you beat yourself up and shame yourself for not achieving the goal you set. But really, it just wasn't congruent for you. That's
yeah.
just one example, the wealth one. But it could have been another common one you hear at the start of the year is I'm going to lose 5 kg, or I'm going to lose 10 kg, or I'm going to eat healthier, or I'm going to get in
Mm,
shape.
mm,
And if you look at what you've done over the last year to 2 years, if exercising was never really important to you and eating in a particular way wasn't really important to you, and you just decide, I'm going to do that, but there's no real congruence. In other words, it's not really important to you. You like the idea, but the
mm,
pain of doing those things outweighs the
mm,
benefit you perceive you're going to get because it's not that important. You're just going to not do it.
yeah.
And this is what most people do. And then they beat themselves up instead of getting
Mm,
really clear on what is important to them and makes them unique, and then
mm,
setting goals that align
mm.
to their values or priorities. That's the key.
That, yeah, that's gold. And I think the realization there, like I think for me, sometimes setting goals, looking back at times I was in a bit of a fantasy land.
Yeah.
Like you just said, it's a great idea. I saw that, I want to do that, or be that, and blah, 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 and bring it back down. But the key thing I think for me that I'm learning, which you just hit the nail on the head, is the pain, is that yes, it's great to put a goal down on paper, but
Yeah.
there's that sort of, I don't know what the law's called, but it's when I say law of the universe, I mean like where, like the 10,000 hours thing. Like
Hmm.
if you all of a sudden decide to make $1 million, for example, yes, it might magically happen if your intention and you manifest it quick enough. But generally, there's an element of pain that comes into that, it's like learning how to manage money, learn how to make money, and then losing some money, making more money, losing some more, like that whole cycle of like building that 10,000 hours or whatever of experience,
Yeah.
finding what channel works, which this one doesn't work. I can trust that person. I can't trust that person,
Yeah.
like um, it's fascinating. So I think I don't like to use the word realistic, but I think it's actually having a realistic conversation with myself and going, well, actually, yeah, is this goal really aligned? Am I going to actually, when the rubber hits the road and I'm faced with pain or challenge, am I actually
Yeah.
going to choose to push through that? Is it
Totally.
important enough to me?
Yeah, 100%. Because when
Mm,
something's important to us, we will see what a lot of us do. I'll just go back a step. What a lot of us do, we're geared to avoid pain and seek pleasure.
yeah.
And part of that is a survival mechanism because obviously in the wild, if we don't want to have pain, we don't want to be injured, we don't want to be consumed by a predator. And so
Mm,
we have a natural tendency, which is a survival mechanism, which has to be
mm,
there to avoid the pain. And so I think we've touched on this before, but you can't avoid pain or challenge. And so you have to
mm,
choose it wisely. When you are operating high in your values and the things that are most important, so it could be your family, it could be your business, your job, whatever it is,
mm,
you're more likely to withstand and handle the pain or challenge that comes with that and handle both sides, support and challenge,
Yeah.
because it's important to you. But when you
Mm,
start setting
mm,
something
mm,
or you
mm,
start going for something that's way down on your priorities, way down on your
mm,
values,
mm.
and then you get some pain or you get some challenge, because it's not really that important, you're going to naturally want to push away from that and get away from it.
Yeah.
This is
Interesting.
why you've really got to set goals and intentions that are congruent, which means in alignment with you, so that
Mm,
you will take both sides, support and challenge, and you're willing
mm,
to go through the oscillation of that.
mm.
But for example, what's something that's low on my values? It's I don't know. Let's say that my mum knitted my son a jersey or something like that. And for her, it was really important. I looked at it and thought, oh, I don't like the look of that, but he liked it. I'm not going to kind of, object to that because it's important to her. It's not as important to me, that area of my life, to really worry or focus on what I'm going to do. It's kind of a weird example, but um,
Mm, mm.
kind of works. Like if something's not that important to me, I'm going to be more flexible with it. And I'm
Well,
not going to really care
yeah.
that whether it carries through or not.
Yeah.
So again, it's making sure that it's in alignment. So something that I do really care about in regards to my son, as an example, as a goal, is what I give him that's going to help his health. So
Mm,
like, for
mm,
example, I give him supplements. I make sure he eats like pretty clean when he's eating at home with me. We go out sometimes and we have other stuff, but that's like something that's really important to me. So if I see something that's going to get in the way of that, I'm going to
mm,
stand up.
mm,
I'm going to say
mm,
something. I'm
mm.
going to make a fuss about it.
Yeah.
So we all do this on a subconscious level with different areas of our
Mm,
lives.
mm.
Same with
Oh,
my
yeah.
coaching. My coaching's,
Yeah.
one of my top priorities, my top values. And so if
Mm,
I know that if someone needs me as a coach, whatever, I'm going to show up, I'm going to be there. I'm going to help that
yeah.
person, because the transformation aspect and what I do and how I give value is my way of being here on this earth.
Mm,
As
mm,
the thing that fulfills me. So I'm going to
mm,
show up in that context. But
mm.
then if someone was to ask me, hey, could you help me shift a house? Or could you pick up a hammer and start building something for me and doing that? I'm like, well, so like there and then
Yeah.
I'm not, I never kind of got into doing things with my hands as much. So that area is not as important to me, and I'm more likely to not want to do that. But if the
Mm,
same person said, can you support me mentally? I'm going through some shit,
mm,
I'd be there.
mm, mm.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of like a bit of an
Yeah.
example
Oh,
on
definitely. And and I got I think I'm gonna cover. I'm thinking of a couple of situations where classic examples of the pain part as well.
Mhm.
So I had a really good friend of mine who I believe is the best salesperson that I've come across, or one of the best salesperson that I've come across. And like I've done a bit of sales over the years, and I not a lot, but a bit enough to realize about that fear of rejection. And what that's one of the first barriers is to push through the fear of rejection. He pushed through it so much where he would sort of embrace them and go, okay, great, I got a no. So the more no's that I get, the
Yeah.
faster I get to the yeses, basically was his approach.
Yeah.
And so it removed the emotional attachment to getting rejected. He
Yeah.
was looking for the no's. He was just a
Yeah.
numbers game. He was getting
Yeah.
as many people through his sales funnel as he could.
Yeah.
And doing it, obviously doing a professional job of selling and in a good space and, selling really well. But the more no's he got, he would find his yes. More
Yeah.
no's, find his yes. And he was just breaking records all over the place.
Yeah. So if you look at the individual
Interesting, eh?
without knowing
Mm,
fully what's
mm.
driving him, just from what you've told me,
Oh, well, it was
we
definitely money was
yeah, so
driving
we
him
could
higher on
assume,
his
okay, so he
values.
had
Yeah,
big, we can
yeah.
assume that he had big financial goals,
Mm,
and a lot of people do, but we could also assume that social rejection,
mm,
his social acceptance, he didn't really care, right? And this is where most people kind of that go into commission work or sales work, they fold,
mm, mm.
because the fear of rejection or how they're
Yeah.
being perceived socially is more important than the outcome that they've set the goal to get. And
Mm.
so that's why those people fold.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
and we all have subconscious motives and drivers. The subconscious is what you've basically stored in your body, in your nervous system, because the subconscious mind records everything.
Mm,
And
mm,
so, how we were programmed growing up, beliefs that have been instilled, things that when generational stuff that's been passed down, so epigenetically coded, but also what we've seen through the nurturing aspect and what we We got brought up with our money beliefs, what a marriage looks like, what this looks like, what that looks like, all that stuff stored in the subconscious.
Mm.
And then based on that, we create narratives around what we perceive we're worth, what we should have, what we shouldn't have. And so often too, people are setting a goal to like, oh, this year I want to make $1 million or whatever it is. But subconsciously, they don't believe they're worth that. And so they will then, I wouldn't even call it sabotage. It's just they'll stay congruent to the belief and the
Mm.
story they have
Mm.
to keep themselves in that particular place because that's where they view themselves.
Yeah.
And so
Interesting.
their reticular activator, which is the part of the brain that's filtering and looking at for things that are relevant, is searching constantly for those things to keep them in the area that they believe that they should be kept in. And so that's
Mm.
another piece that really goes. And until you unlock those subconscious motives and you bring from the dark to light the things that are buried in there that you kind of don't know, but maybe every now and then you kind of get a whisper of or it
Yeah.
pops up,
Yeah.
you have to bring those to light and acknowledge them first and make yourself aware of them. And then you can start to actually integrate that or shift it to then shift your version of yourself and what you believe you can and can't have.
Yeah.
So that's
Nice.
another piece that kind of really gets people stuck and they don't realize
Mm.
is driving their decisions.
Yeah, definitely. So if I reflect back what you're saying is the first point is obviously incongruency or congruency of values or priorities to your
Yeah,
goals. So making
yeah,
sure that what you're setting yourself for the year is important enough that when the pain and the work part of it and the, dedication part of it comes up, that you actually it's high enough on your values to push through and learn and to grow and to expand.
yeah. You're willing to take that challenge on,
Yeah,
so it's got to be in alignment with you, and your life
yeah,
demonstrates what's important to you. You just got to look back at
yeah,
the last couple of months and go,
yeah.
I have a series of questions I ask people to like look at what's actually going on for them and how they show
Mm,
up.
mm,
Because what we do through our actions is really how we are living and what is
mm,
important to us. Lip service and people saying things is one thing, but watch someone's behavior to truly understand what drives that person.
mm.
So
Interesting.
the saying something's one thing, but look at their
Mm,
behavior
yeah,
and what their actions are to really determine on what's driving that person or
yeah.
what's important to them.
Okay. And then the second piece was the underlying beliefs. So, for example, um, let's just say that I do have a high value on, let, let's just say money because it's a common one and,
Yeah,
it's an
you can say
interesting
money
topic
or weight loss or
or
like
weight
getting
loss. Yeah,
fit.
money
Yeah,
or weight
either of
loss.
those two
Let's
are
just say
very
getting
common.
fit.
Yeah,
Um, and I do have a value, a value on that, like a strong value on that, but I have an underlying belief. So that part's aligned, but then the underlying belief might be that oh, I'm not good with money, or um, someone told me I was fat when I was a kid, and I believe it. I've believed it ever since. Like, how
Mhm.
do I then, if that underlying belief is kind of like a glass ceiling or kind of keeping me locked down, how do I then change that underlying belief?
Yeah, this is another big topic, but
Mm,
essentially, it's first of all becoming aware of the belief,
yeah.
and that's quite sometimes that's hard to do on your own because, as
Mm,
I touched on at the start, we will have blind spots. And so some of the programs and the subconscious beliefs we have were ingrained in us, between the womb or 0 and to 7, 8, 9, 10. And so we may not even be conscious that we've taken on and we've made things mean things during that time. But that's where a lot of the imprinting takes place. And as I
mm,
also mentioned, if you look at generational trauma, that can come, down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 generations all the way through. It's kind of passed through those perceptions and gene expressions that get turned on through generational trauma is obviously we don't know, what's been kind of even programmed into us, into our system that we're dealing with that's not even ours.
mm,
So until you can kind of have someone shine the light on that and ask questions and get to the bottom of it and bring it to light, those things will run the show.
mm,
Once you have identified something, if I look at it, yeah, the relationship aspect is a really big piece as well, as in
mm.
how we watched our parents parent, whether how we
Yeah,
saw them
yeah.
interact with each other, how they
Mm,
brought
mm,
us up,
mm, mm,
what's our version of love, like what does two parents being married look like? We
mm,
don't just do what we've told, we do what we're shown. And
mm,
so the things that were demonstrated then become part of how we see and we migrate to because it's familiar. And so we will start repeating the same patterns that we watched our parents do, or
Mm,
often we'll go
mm,
completely the other way because we're trying to get away from what the parents did, but it
mm,
still has an influence. So until you
mm,
pull those pieces out and you
mm,
become aware of, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that this was something I decided about myself. And then we take that piece and instead of trying to bury it and run from it, we embrace it because it's part of you. And then we integrate it and we shift the narrative and shift the relationship to it. That's what then has you kind of free yourself out of that position or that belief
mm,
system
mm.
and
Oh,
enables you
yeah.
to then create a blank canvas to then repaint and create something different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's massive. That's some of the work that I've been doing with you around that's been massive for me. So for
Yeah, give an
example,
example, for
I've
example.
spoken about, yeah, like my relationship with my daughter. It's really dear to my heart. So high on my values and my kids, right? I've got two beautiful kids and talking about the value scale, when the first one was born, all of a sudden this little child just appeared at near the top of my values in my top three, obviously,
Yeah.
and then another one's come in now. I've got two now, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they just magically have moved to the top of my values chain or, near the top, and it's kind of like, whoa. So to your point earlier, that's how as life changes, our values move up and down, right?
Yeah.
But for me, um, I if if in the past, if I had set the goal, for example, to be a better father or to build the relationship with my daughter, um, I didn't even realize at the time that I was stuck in those tapes that you were saying, that I was modeling some of the behaviors that were taught to me. And that as much as I would have tried to change, yes, I would have probably been able to sort of force some different behaviors of myself, but the underlying tension or inability to cope with the situation that was coming up with my kids, which is just basically emotional turmoil. I just was not um, able to handle that very well because it was just not modeled to me when I was little. Um, by going in and understanding what was going on as a child for me and how I could then get awareness around that and then integrate and heal some of that stuff, I suppose. It wasn't like, real crazy trauma. It was just stuff, baggage,
Hmm.
I suppose. And once I was able to kind of reconcile that and actually understand and heal some of that, the relationship with my daughter just changed. So,
Yeah.
um, I suppose now if I set a goal to be the best dad I can be, my goal is to be a leader at home. And so that means for me now I have the tools to actually be able to be a leader with my wife and with my kids. And actually for me, that means as we talk about like self-reflection, looking in the mirror, being able to handle my emotions. Like I had a situation this morning crop up, for example, where my little girl had a spaz. She didn't want to go to school, but it's more around that she's at preschool and her friends are leaving to go to primary school now. So all her friends are leaving here and she's feeling sad about it, but she was
Yeah.
not going to brushing her teeth. She was having a big spaz about it. But when I made the time to dig a bit deeper with her, I realized that she's actually sad, and she'd
Yeah.
much rather be at home playing with mum,
Yeah.
and she's struggling with the change or transition that's happening from her preschool to her primary school, and it's just a beautiful thing. So I think that's a really good example for me of like, yeah, I could have been writing as many goals as I wanted this year to be a good father or whatever, but the transformative stuff really happened by changing that underlying belief for me. And now I am confident to set a goal in that space and actually go, well, yeah, it's actually going to take some pain though. It means
Hmm.
that when my daughter has a spaz, that I need to breathe, relax, engage with her and figure out what's actually going on for her and be there for her as opposed to kind of just shuffling her away and forcing her to brush her teeth, put the seatbelt in, get her in the car and take her to school. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's a very different way of handling it.
Yeah, and so
Um,
just on that, there's a bit of a
mm,
kind of distinction with what you're saying too, because you
mm,
could have still had the same goal to be the
mm,
best dad, right?
mm.
And you could have still been the best dad based in the capabilities and the awareness you
True.
had.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, what you're kind of talking about now is that through doing some deeper work on yourself and peeling back layers about how you were brought up,
Yeah.
and then some of your responses when your daughter had a reaction,
Yeah.
is you're able to show up way more present and different instead of getting into your own stuff and
Yeah.
then avoiding her or not knowing how to show up and hold space. So you kind
Yes.
of deepened your understanding and deepened your ability to show up in ways that you
Yeah.
weren't modeled, and that's fundamentally different. So you could have still had the same goal to be the best dad, but your understanding of it now and how to show up has changed.
Exactly. And if you
Yeah.
apply that same framework, say, for example, to money, job, career, and career or
Yeah.
whatever, relationship, whatever it might be, once you start unpacking and changing some of the underlying beliefs, it almost kind of supercharges the goal, I think, in a way, and that's where I think we talk about like guaranteeing someone can achieve their 2024 goals. I can tell you if you set the goal that's congruent and then go in and do some of the work on this belief stuff, that magic happens. Like I'm living,
Totally.
breathing,
Well,
example of
you've got
that,
to, when you set a goal as well, if you look at it,
Mm.
thoughts create, they're
Yeah.
energetic. So when
Yeah.
you have a thought, it puts it out there. When you connect your head and your heart,
Mm.
because your heart, also your head and heart are part of your system. The
Yeah.
heart has the desire, the head has the ideas. When you connect that and you have a
Mm.
goal that you've set that's connected head and heart,
Yeah.
then you've really got energy for manifesting and creating. But if it's
Mm.
just head without the connection to heart and whether you truly believe that you're worthy of achieving that goal, you're not going to achieve it.
Yeah.
And so we will always come back to where we perceive and feel we're worth. We don't get
Mm.
what we
Mm.
deserve, we get what we are worth.
Definitely.
And so if we look at money one for a start, and this comes in every area of our life when looking at expanding, the two primary fears that everyone has is fear of loss of that we don't want to lose, which is fear of abandonment, and fear of gaining that we don't want to
Mm.
gain,
Mm.
a responsibility we don't want, which is fear of engulfment, being
Yeah.
engulfed by it. And so
Yeah.
when you set a new goal, say, for example, you want to go from 100K to 200K for the year,
Mm.
you might look at that 200K, and what happens in your nervous system is it brings all sorts of stuff up. There's the fear of like, oh, what would I have to do to get that 200K? Like, would I then change as a person? Like, we have all these different narratives. Will I be judged? Well, whatever narrative is there. And so there's the
Mm.
fear of
Mm.
engulfment. Like, if I do hit that, what is that going to mean? And so it triggers the nervous
Mm.
system
Mm.
to then go, that's not safe. And if it's not, if we don't perceive it safe, we're not going to go for it because we have a fear and we're trying to stay safe, which is a natural survival mechanism. And just the same as if we have that goal, we might have the abandonment fear. Will my friends still like me? What if I lose
Mm.
that money? Like, what's going to happen then? So we have the abandonment aspect come up too when we set those new paradigms, those new goals. And so we kind of
Mm.
oscillate between fear of abandonment and fear of engulfment.
Mm.
And so when you integrate these two pieces and you change inside your subconscious and your nervous system, what that really means for you, and you shift your belief and your idea of self,
Mm.
that's what then allows you to level up and to achieve those goals. But if you don't
Mm.
do that and then you set these big lofty goals, those two pieces kick in and then you're going to kind of repel it because you're trying to stay safe.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
And so
That's
it's not about
awesome.
making yourself wrong and this is what a lot of people do. This is part of the issue too. They kind of go into a shame cycle. So when they
Mm.
don't hit the goal, instead of looking at it from a deeper perspective about what was going on for them, that's when they're like, oh, I didn't achieve it. Oh, I'm stupid. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm not this. When it's like, no, you just didn't uncover the underlying patterns, the underlying beliefs that were
Mm.
keeping you where you perceived you were safe and that you felt that you
Yeah.
were worth.
Yeah.
Once you kind of look at it from a different position like that, you can have
Mm.
some compassion for yourself and you can address those shadow parts, those parts you buried, those
Mm.
parts that are like painful to lean into. And when you lean
Mm.
into them and you bring them to the surface, you can now do something with them.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, definitely. So good, man. So just to summarize and come back through, we've spoken about goals that match your values essentially, that are aligned with values, and then working on underlying beliefs to essentially sort of supercharge, to develop yourself so that you can then kind of break through any glass ceilings and that sort of thing. Like I'm super passionate about that in my life and actually helping other people achieve that as well.
yeah.
If someone's listening to that now and want to, get some further help with that from you, Mike, on that, like, have you got capacity at the moment to take on new coaching clients, and how would that work? How would someone get in touch with you or book a session to kind of start working on their goals, and talk to you about their goals and the value piece, and then possibly start working on some underlying beliefs as well?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely have some capacity. Like I have limited capacity, but I have capacity. And some of the best way to reach out to me is either we can pop my email and the link and or my website as well, so people can have a bit of a look and look at some of the testimonies, and then they can reach out for a 15-20 minute no obligation chat. Doesn't matter
Yep.
where anyone is. Most of my stuff's done over Zoom, so that's definitely possible. Um, and, I advise anyone as well, just the same as what I do. Yeah, if you want to progress and you want to continue to grow and evolve, have someone that's actually on board with you, that's not just going to be a yes person, but it's going to challenge you and hold the
Mm.
mirror up, because it's through that you get the growth and evolution.
Mm.
And as I kind of touched on a number of times, even though I have all this knowledge and I can help unlock stuff for other people, I still need someone on the outside of me to help me do the same,
Mm.
because it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have, we all have blind spots, and that's part of this journey. And so
Mm.
we invest in our cars, we invest in repainting the house and wiring a fitness for the vehicles and making sure that's all safe. It really blows me away, the amount of people. And again, it's a value, right? But the
Mm.
amount of people that don't invest back in themselves, because you are the change in this world. The only thing that you continue with is yourself.
Mm.
And so, it's always been my philosophy to make sure you invest in you and love yourself,
Mm.
because you are it. People come, people go, relationships change, businesses change, jobs change, you
Mm.
change countries, you change cities, but you are still with you. And so
Mm.
it's wise to invest in you.
Oh, 100%. On that note, if you want to invest in you, check out Mike's links below, get in touch, subscribe to our channel. These type of authentic, powerful conversations is what we're about. And we encourage you to have them wherever you go as well. We'll see
Yeah,
you
and part
next
of what I
time.
love what we're doing here, and I hope this
Mm.
really resonates with people, is to hold, like, to be able to be open and authentic, and
Mm.
not try and hide about what's going on.
Mm.
Too many people are too worried about being real because of what someone's going to say and think. When you realize we're all the same, we're all
Yeah.
just packaged slightly differently, but we have all the same shit. We have all the same stuff going on. So to me, having these deeper conversations where we can be really real without judgment is a really needed thing as our world changes and evolves right
Mm.
now. So
Mm.
that's where I really love to have these.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mike.
Awesome.